Imagine this. Someone who thrives on control suddenly meets a person they cannot manipulate. They betray, they deceive, they push all the wrong buttons, but for the first time, their actions come back to haunt them. That wound they carry, it lasts a lifetime. You think only the betrayed suffers, but the truth is darker. When a narcissist crosses the wrong person, the repercussions are subtle, relentless, and permanent. They don't just lose trust, they carry a scar in their ego, a silent reminder of the one person who saw through their facade and refused to be controlled. If this resonates, pause and reflect. Have you ever encountered someone who underestimated you and left them forever changed without even trying? Comment your story below. Recognizing the impact of refusal is the first step toward understanding these dynamics. When a narcissist betrays someone who cannot be manipulated, their ego suffers a profound and lasting wound. For a person whose sense of self is built on control, admiration, and the belief that they can bend others to their will, encountering someone who sees through their facade is deeply unsettling. The betrayal is not just about losing influence over another person. It strikes at the core of their identity. Suddenly, the image they've carefully curated of being clever, dominant, and untouchable is shattered. This experience creates a vulnerability they are unaccustomed to feeling, leaving a lasting mark on their psyche. They may replay the event over and over in their mind, analyzing every misstep, every moment when their power was resisted, feeling the sting of failure acutely. Unlike ordinary disappointments, this kind of wound doesn't fade easily because it challenges the very framework of how they see themselves and how they interact with the world. Even if they hide it behind charm, bravado, or deflection, the internal impact lingers, shaping their thoughts, behaviors, and future attempts at manipulation. They may become more guarded, hypervigilant, or controlling in other areas of life to compensate for the ego fracture. The more significant the betrayal, the deeper the scar, and the more it influences their emotional stability and interpersonal interactions. In essence, when a narcissist encounters someone who refuses to be controlled, it leaves them carrying a wound that isn't visible to the outside world, but is a permanent psychological reminder of their own limits and failures. When a narcissist betrays the wrong person, the most immediate and destabilizing impact is the loss of control. For someone whose identity and sense of power are built on influencing and manipulating others, encountering someone who resists or refuses to be swayed is deeply unsettling. This isn't just a minor inconvenience, it shakes the foundation of how they see themselves in the world. They rely on the assumption that people will bend to their will, and when that fails, it creates an intense internal friction. They may feel frustrated, powerless, or even humiliated, and this frustration lingers long after the initial interaction. The loss of control forces them to confront their own limitations, something they are psychologically ill-equipped to handle. It can manifest as obsessive thoughts, ruminations about the event, or even quiet attempts to regain leverage in subtle ways. Over time, this wound informs how they approach relationships, interactions, and opportunities for influence in the future. They become hypervigilant, suspicious of others' intentions, and more guarded in their attempts at control. Even if they appear outwardly confident and unaffected, the internal reality is one of simmering resentment and lingering anxiety. The experience leaves them acutely aware that their usual tactics can fail, instilling a deep sense of caution and strategic calculation in all future dealings. In essence, losing control over someone who cannot be manipulated doesn't just sting temporarily, it creates a psychological scar that shapes their ego, behavior, and perception of power for years to come. When a narcissist betrays the wrong person, the humiliation they experience is often deeply private but intensely felt. Unlike ordinary embarrassment, which fades over time, this kind of unseen humiliation cuts straight to the core of their carefully constructed self-image. They have built a persona of invincibility, cleverness, and dominance, and when that persona is pierced, even if no one else witnesses it, the wound is real and persistent. The realization that someone saw through their manipulation or refused to be controlled shatters the illusion of perfection they maintain. They replay the incident in their mind repeatedly, dissecting every detail, every perceived mistake, and every moment their image was tarnished. This internalized shame is compounded by the narcissist's refusal or inability to accept vulnerability, which makes the experience all the more unbearable. Even when they try to cover it up with charm, deflection, or anger, the sting remains beneath the surface, shaping their behavior in subtle and pervasive ways. They may overcompensate in other areas of life, exaggerate successes, or project blame onto others to protect their fragile ego. The humiliation lingers because it represents a failure they cannot reconcile with their self-concept, and it can influence future relationships, decision-making, and attempts at control. In essence, the unseen humiliation of betraying the wrong person is not just a fleeting embarrassment. It is a lasting psychological scar that undermines their sense of invulnerability and haunts their ego long after the event has passed. When a narcissist betrays the wrong person, it often triggers a deep-seated fear of exposure. For someone whose identity relies on control, charm, and the careful management of their image, being seen for who they truly are, flawed, manipulative, and vulnerable, is terrifying. They may recognize consciously or subconsciously that their actions could reveal weaknesses, mistakes, or moral failings they cannot afford to show. This fear isn't just about reputational damage in the eyes of others. It's about the internal threat to their own self-concept. They become hyper-vigilant, scrutinizing interactions, monitoring perceptions, and calculating every word and gesture to avoid further exposure. This heightened sense of alertness can manifest as paranoia, anxiety, or obsessive thoughts about what others know or suspect. They may revise stories, rewrite narratives, or engage in gaslighting to maintain the illusion of infallibility. Even when outwardly composed, internally they are navigating a storm of self-protection, trying to contain the consequences of their betrayal and shield themselves from scrutiny. The fear of exposure can influence their behavior for years, making them overly cautious in relationships and interactions, while simultaneously seeking to regain the control and image they feel slipping away. In essence, the narcissist carries the psychological weight of having been seen too clearly, and that hidden fear becomes a persistent, guiding force, shaping their decisions, defenses, and future attempts to manipulate or dominate. When a narcissist betrays the wrong person, their mind often becomes consumed with thoughts of retaliation or regaining control. Even if they outwardly appear calm or indifferent, internally they may obsess over the betrayal, replaying scenarios and strategizing subtle ways to reassert dominance or protect their ego. This isn't always overt revenge. More often, it manifests as carefully calculated actions designed to manipulate perception, influence others, or regain a sense of superiority. They may monitor your reactions, test boundaries, or engineer situations where they can feel in control again, all while keeping their intentions hidden. These ruminations are fueled by a combination of wounded pride, fear of exposure, and the frustration of having their manipulation thwarted. The narcissist may also cultivate resentment, silently cataloging grievances to justify future actions or to convince themselves that any retaliatory behavior is deserved. Over time, this obsession can shape their behavior across multiple relationships, making them more guarded, strategic, and cautious in interactions to prevent a repeat of the same experience. The danger is that their internal plotting often goes unnoticed, leaving those around them vulnerable to subtle manipulation or psychological pressure. Recognizing this tendency is essential for protecting yourself. By understanding that a narcissist may harbor long-term preoccupation with regaining control, you can maintain emotional boundaries, avoid engagement in their schemes, and prevent yourself from being drawn into repeated cycles of manipulation and retribution. Awareness is the key to staying safe while they navigate their unspoken plans. When a narcissist betrays the wrong person, it often triggers intense emotional instability beneath their outward composure. While they may appear confident, charming, or indifferent to the outside world, internally, they are experiencing a storm of anxiety, anger, and self-doubt. The betrayal challenges their sense of invincibility and control, leaving them frustrated and off balance. This emotional turbulence is rarely visible to others, which allows them to continue presenting a calm facade while privately ruminating over the perceived injustice or failure. They may swing between fleeting rage, brooding resentment, and self-pity, often obsessing over how the betrayal reflects on them or how it could have been avoided. This instability can influence how they interact with others, making them more reactive, unpredictable, or overly defensive. It also reinforces their need to regain control and protect their ego, sometimes prompting subtle manipulations or calculated behaviors to reassert dominance. Over time, these emotional patterns can become ingrained, influencing their responses in future relationships, social interactions, and attempts at influence. The instability isn't just a temporary reaction, it's a psychological residue of being confronted with someone they cannot control, a reminder that their usual tactics can fail. Recognizing this pattern helps you see that their outward confidence is often a mask, and the emotional turbulence beneath can explain why they behave in manipulative, obsessive, or unpredictable ways. Awareness allows you to maintain distance, protect your boundaries, and avoid being drawn into the cycles created by their hidden instability. When a narcissist betrays the wrong person, they often respond by projecting blame and deflecting responsibility to protect their fragile ego. Instead of acknowledging their misdeeds or confronting the consequences, they shift the focus onto others, twisting the narrative so that they appear justified, misunderstood, or even victimized. They might insist that the other person overreacted, provoked them, or misinterpreted the situation, creating confusion and self-doubt in those around them. This projection serves a dual purpose. It shields them from accountability while reinforcing their self-image as competent, clever, and untouchable. Over time, this tendency can become a habitual defense mechanism, influencing how they handle criticism, conflict, and failure in every aspect of life. By constantly rewriting the story and deflecting blame, they maintain control over perception, ensuring that others, friends, colleagues, or even new partners, see them in the favorable light they desire. Internally, it also helps them manage shame, embarrassment, or insecurity without ever addressing the underlying issues. The danger is that projection and deflection can make it difficult for those around them to recognize the truth or confront the behavior effectively. Understanding that these tactics are not about reconciliation or truth, but about preserving their ego and controlling the narrative allows you to separate reality from their distortions. Awareness of this pattern is essential to protect your boundaries, maintain emotional clarity, and avoid being drawn into cycles of manipulation, denial, or repeated betrayal. When a narcissist betrays the wrong person, that single experience often leaves a lasting scar that shapes every future interaction and relationship. They carry a psychological wound that makes them hyper-aware of the possibility of resistance or failure, and it colors the way they approach trust, intimacy, and control from that point onward. Even if they appear charming, confident, or unaffected, internally they are cautious, calculating, and guarded, constantly scanning for threats to their ego or opportunities to regain dominance. That one encounter becomes a reference point, a silent warning that their usual tactics of manipulation and deception are not infallible. They may overcompensate in future relationships, testing boundaries more subtly, projecting confidence while masking insecurity, or avoiding situations where their influence could be challenged. The wound also reinforces patterns of self-preservation, making them more defensive, strategic, and psychologically rigid over time. While outwardly they may seem unchanged, the experience has fundamentally altered how they navigate social dynamics, power, and control. Recognizing this allows you to see that their behavior is often shaped by fear, insecurity, and the lingering impact of being confronted by someone who refused to be manipulated. Understanding this hidden scar helps you protect yourself, maintain perspective, and avoid being caught in repeated cycles of control, while also illuminating the deep, lasting effect a single act of defiance can have on even the most controlling individual. After examining the hidden consequences a narcissist faces when they betray the wrong person, it becomes clear that the impact is not one-sided. While the person betrayed bears the visible pain and emotional fallout, the narcissist carries an invisible, enduring wound that shapes their behavior, thoughts, and relationships for years to come. Their ego, built on control, charm, and invulnerability, is deeply fractured when manipulation fails, leaving lasting insecurity and self-doubt. Losing control over someone who cannot be deceived challenges the very foundation of their identity, while the humiliation, fear of exposure, and obsessive thoughts about retaliation create a persistent internal storm. They project blame, deflect responsibility, and rewrite the narrative to protect themselves, all while concealing emotional instability and carefully guarding their image. Every subsequent interaction, relationship, or attempt at manipulation is influenced by this silent scar, making them more strategic, guarded, and psychologically rigid. While their outward appearance may suggest confidence and composure, internally they carry reminders of their failure, fueling hypervigilance, resentment, and fear of being unmasked again. Understanding this dynamic is essential not to justify their behavior, but to recognize the patterns of control and manipulation and to protect yourself. Awareness allows you to reclaim your own emotional clarity, maintain boundaries, and disengage from cycles of psychological influence. It reveals a profound truth. Confronting a narcissist with someone who refuses to be controlled leaves a mark that reshapes them forever, even if it is invisible to the outside world, and offers insight into the power of standing firm against manipulation.